She had always loved music, though very few people knew how much. Ever since she was a child, the piano had been her world. The soft touch of the keys, the feeling of the notes running through her fingers, it was like breathing for her. She had spent countless hours alone in her room, practicing scales and songs that no one else cared to hear. Her talent was her secret, a private joy that she held close, almost like a treasure she wasn't ready to share. That evening, she found herself at a small gathering hosted by a colleague. It was a casual event, not fancy, with a few dozen people chatting, laughing, and enjoying simple drinks and snacks. She had come mostly to be polite, not expecting anything special to happen. She often felt more comfortable in quiet spaces, away from attention, where she could observe life without being noticed. It was her way of feeling safe, of feeling in control. As she moved through the room, smiling politely at acquaintances, she noticed a piano tucked in the corner. It was an old upright, a little worn but still inviting. Memories of her childhood practice sessions came rushing back, a warmth spreading inside her chest. She looked at it for a moment and smiled softly to herself. Playing had always been her escape, her solace when the world felt too loud. She was just standing there, lost in thought, when someone approached her. A voice, light and teasing, said, "Why don't you play something for us? Come on, it'll be fun." There was laughter from nearby friends, the kind of laughter that carried a hint of challenge, almost daring her to say yes. It wasn't mean-spirited, but it was playful enough to make her heart skip a beat. She froze for a moment. Her mind raced. She had never performed in front of anyone outside of family or her occasional music teacher. The idea of playing here, in front of these people who mostly knew her as quiet and reserved, felt both thrilling and terrifying. She could feel her hands tighten at her sides, a mixture of nerves and excitement coursing through her. Her first instinct was to decline politely. She almost said, "I don't really perform for people." But the teasing tone lingered, and there was something in it that made her consider trying. Maybe it would be fun, she thought, or at least it would be a story she could laugh about later. She walked slowly toward the piano, her shoes making soft sounds on the wooden floor. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of expectations had settled on her shoulders. As she reached the piano, she paused, placing her fingers gently on the keys. The keys felt familiar, cool and smooth under her touch. She closed her eyes for a moment and breathed in deeply, letting the memories of late nights and early mornings spent practicing come to her. She remembered the small victories she had celebrated alone, the difficult pieces she had mastered after weeks of effort, the joy that had always been hers when she could finally play something perfectly. A small crowd had gathered, their laughter and whispers creating a low hum around her. Some were curious, some amused, expecting a light, perhaps clumsy performance. She could hear someone joking, "Don't mess up," and another voice laughing, "This should be interesting." She felt a twinge of anxiety, but she pushed it aside. Deep down, she knew that music was her language, her way of speaking when words were not enough. She pressed a single note to begin, and the sound resonated gently in the room. It was soft, almost shy, but it carried a clarity that made a few heads turn. She allowed herself to settle into the music, letting her fingers move naturally. The first few notes were simple, not trying to impress, just letting the melody flow from her mind to her hands. The room seemed to quiet down slightly, the casual chatter fading as people noticed the unexpected care in her playing. As she continued, her confidence grew. The music became richer, more expressive. She could feel the energy in the room shift, the laughter dying down, replaced by attentive gazes. People were beginning to realize that this was not just a casual attempt or a joke. Her fingers danced across the keys with precision and grace, hitting notes with a control and emotion that made it impossible not to be drawn in. She glanced up briefly and caught a few stunned expressions. The teasing had vanished, replaced by a mix of awe and curiosity. She felt a quiet thrill, a small, private satisfaction that she had never expected to share with anyone outside her practice sessions. The music was flowing through her, carrying her confidence, her memories, and the years of dedication that had brought her to this moment. Some of the people in the room whispered to each other, astonished by the skill they were witnessing. Others simply watched, eyes wide, some with their mouths slightly open, unable to believe what they were hearing. She didn't stop, didn't look for approval. She played because it was what she loved, because it was who she was. Every note, every chord, carried a part of her story, a story that had been hidden behind her quiet demeanor. For a while, the world outside that small room seemed to disappear. She was lost in the music, in the feeling of creating something beautiful in that moment. Her nerves, which had been so strong just minutes ago, were replaced by a calm focus. She was entirely present, and the room responded to her presence, drawn into the spell of her performance. She noticed small details she had never paid attention to before. The subtle sway of someone leaning closer to hear better, the way hands clasped in anticipation, the quick exchange of amazed glances. Every small reaction fueled her playing, made her more determined to express everything she had stored inside for so long. As the piece progressed, she could sense the energy in the room building. It was as if the music had a life of its own, moving through the space and connecting everyone there. People who had come expecting a light-hearted joke were now captivated, caught off guard by the talent they had underestimated. There was a palpable silence, a shared moment of wonder that no one could interrupt. By the time she finished the first piece, there was a brief pause, almost reverent, before the room erupted into applause. The sound was overwhelming, warm, and genuine. She looked up, slightly surprised herself, and saw smiles, nods, and a few people even clapping with tears in their eyes. She had expected laughter or polite claps at best, but this was different. This was admiration, pure and heartfelt. Her own heart was racing, a mix of relief and exhilaration. She had stepped out of her comfort zone and found that the world could respond with wonder instead of mockery. It was a powerful moment, one that she would carry with her forever. She realized that her talent, once hidden, could speak louder than any words, that her dedication and passion could make an impact even in the most unexpected circumstances. People approached her after the performance, some shaking her hand, others asking questions about her training, her favorite pieces, or where she had learned to play so beautifully. She answered politely, smiling, feeling a newfound confidence that she had never felt before. The teasing that had prompted her to play now seemed trivial compared to the recognition she was receiving. She left the piano that night feeling different. Lighter, perhaps, or maybe more aware of what she was capable of. The world had shown her that even a quiet, reserved person could surprise everyone, could take a small challenge and turn it into something unforgettable. And in that realization, she felt a quiet, enduring joy. Music had always been her refuge, and now it had also become her voice, heard and appreciated by others in a way she had never imagined. After the applause, she stepped back from the piano and took a deep breath. Her hands still tingled from the intensity of the performance, and a warm flush of excitement spread across her face. People were still talking, some looking at her with wide eyes, others exchanging whispers, clearly impressed. She felt a mix of relief and exhilaration. She had shared a part of herself that had always been private, and the response was more than she could have hoped for. As the room slowly settled, a few people gathered around her, asking questions about how long she had been playing and what inspired her. She smiled and answered, keeping her responses simple, though inside she felt a surge of pride. She had never realized how much it meant to be acknowledged, even briefly, by strangers who had only known her in passing. For years, her music had been her secret world, and now it had touched others, even if just for a few moments. One of the colleagues who had teased her earlier stepped closer, a look of surprise on their face. "I didn't expect that at all," they admitted. "You have amazing skill." She nodded, feeling both shy and pleased at the compliment. The teasing tone from before had vanished, replaced by genuine admiration. It was a strange feeling, being seen in a way she had not expected. She looked around the room, noticing people she had barely spoken to before watching her with interest. It was as if her quiet presence had been overlooked for so long, and now, through music, she had claimed a place in their attention. She realized that her talent could speak for her in ways words never had. This thought gave her a newfound sense of confidence, but also a little nervousness, wondering if she could live up to the attention she had suddenly received. The evening continued, and the conversation shifted to other topics, though people still glanced at her occasionally, remembering her performance. She felt the energy in the room differently now, sensing respect where there had been casual amusement before. Every smile and nod from someone new seemed to confirm that the small act of playing the piano had changed the way they saw her. She found herself drawn back to the piano after a while. The room was quieter now, a few lingering guests watching curiously but giving her space. She sat down again, letting her fingers brush the keys softly, feeling the familiar texture under her touch. The piano had always been a companion, and in this moment, it was comforting to return to its presence. The notes she played were gentle, almost reflective, as if speaking to herself more than anyone else. As she played, she noticed the way the sound filled the space. It was different now, having an audience, even if a small one. She felt the subtle shift in the atmosphere, the attention focused quietly on her, the soft hum of anticipation. It was exciting but also grounding, reminding her why she loved music so much. It allowed her to express thoughts and emotions that words could not capture. A few people edged closer, watching silently, not wanting to interrupt but clearly drawn to the music. She could feel the eyes on her, but it did not make her anxious this time. Instead, it motivated her to play more freely, to let the melody flow naturally without holding back. Each note was deliberate, each chord full of feeling. She felt connected to the audience in a way she had never experienced before, even though most of them were strangers. The room remained hushed, the chatter fading entirely as her music took over. There was a quiet intensity, a shared focus that made the space feel intimate despite its casual setting. She realized that music had a power she had only felt privately until now. It could capture attention, evoke emotions, and create connections in ways she had not imagined. This realization filled her with both wonder and humility. She continued playing, letting herself explore different melodies and dynamics. Her hands moved with confidence, the years of practice evident in every note. There was a rhythm to her playing, a flow that seemed effortless, yet each movement was precise and intentional. She could see the subtle reactions of those around her. A soft smile here, a head tilted there, the occasional breath held in admiration. It was quiet, but the effect was undeniable. Some people began whispering to each other, sharing their surprise at her skill. One guest muttered, "I had no idea she could play like that," and another nodded in agreement. She overheard only fragments, but they reinforced what she had already sensed. She had exceeded expectations, and people were genuinely impressed. The laughter and jokes from earlier had vanished completely, replaced by a quiet respect. She felt a growing sense of pride, but it was accompanied by a gentle humility. She knew her talent had been nurtured through countless hours of dedication and practice, often alone, often without recognition. This moment of acknowledgement was rewarding, yet she remained grounded, aware that it was the music itself, not her, that held the attention of the audience. Her role was to let it shine. After a while, she noticed that the initial crowd had grown a little, as others wandered in, drawn by the sound. They stood quietly, listening, some nodding to themselves, others closing their eyes to absorb the music fully. It was a different kind of attention than she had ever experienced, one that felt sincere and unforced. The connection was subtle but powerful, a silent acknowledgement of the effort and passion she had poured into her craft. As the pieces flowed, she experimented with subtle variations, adding nuances that brought out deeper emotions. Her fingers moved fluidly, each motion a reflection of years spent refining her skills. She played with a sense of freedom, no longer bound by self-consciousness or fear of judgment. The piano became an extension of her, a medium through which she could communicate without words. The atmosphere in the room changed gradually. The casual setting had transformed into a space of quiet admiration, where people were fully present in the moment. Even those who had been skeptical or teasing before were now captivated. The music had altered their perception, showing them a side of her that they had never considered. It was a reminder that talent could be hidden in unexpected places, and that first impressions could be misleading. She paused for a moment, letting the final note linger in the air. The silence that followed was almost reverent, filled with unspoken appreciation. Then, slowly, the room came alive with soft applause, smiles, and murmurs of approval. People seemed reluctant to break the spell completely, savoring the impact of what they had just witnessed. She felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that her music had touched them, even in such a small way. As she looked around, she noticed a few people approaching her, asking questions about her training and favorite pieces. She answered politely, though still reserved, feeling a new sense of confidence. Each interaction reinforced her awareness that sharing her talent could create moments of connection and understanding. She realized that music had a way of bridging gaps, speaking to people in ways that transcended words or social expectations. The evening continued, with conversations gradually returning to lighter topics, but she remained quietly aware of the change she had initiated. People seemed to look at her differently now, with curiosity and respect. Even those who had initially teased her were now sincere in their compliments. She felt a subtle shift within herself, a growing recognition that she could step out of her comfort zone and leave a meaningful impression. Later, as the gathering began to wind down, she returned to the piano for a final moment. The room was mostly empty now, but a few lingering guests watched with quiet interest. She played a soft, reflective piece, more personal this time, letting the music express the thoughts and emotions she rarely shared. It was a private moment, yet it carried the same power to connect, even with just a few listeners. When she finally stood up, she felt a sense of completion, a quiet fulfillment that stayed with her. The experience had been both challenging and rewarding, a lesson in courage, patience, and the unexpected joy of sharing a hidden talent. She realized that her music could reach beyond her own world, touching hearts and creating memories for others, even in the most ordinary settings. Walking away from the piano that night, she carried with her a renewed sense of purpose and possibility. The laughter and jokes that had prompted her to play now seemed insignificant compared to the connections she had made through her music. She understood, more deeply than ever, that talent and dedication could shine even in moments of doubt, and that stepping forward, even reluctantly, could lead to experiences far beyond expectation. She sat at the piano once again, feeling a mixture of anticipation and calm. The room had thinned out, but the energy remained, a quiet curiosity that lingered in the air. She placed her fingers on the keys and closed her eyes briefly, letting the memories of her long hours of practice guide her. Every piece she had learned, every difficult passage she had mastered, was ready to flow through her once more. She began with a simple melody, soft and gentle, easing herself into the performance. It was familiar, a piece she had played countless times alone, but tonight it carried a new weight. She felt the subtle shift in the room as the few remaining listeners leaned in, drawn by the first notes. The music was a gentle invitation, a way of connecting without speaking. She let it flow naturally, each note purposeful, each chord deliberate. As she continued, the melody grew more complex, weaving through layers of emotion that only she could express. Her fingers moved with fluidity, precise and confident, as though the piano was an extension of her body. She felt the music fill the room, the sound resonating through the walls, the floor, and into the hearts of those who listened. There was a subtle power in the way it carried, a silent command for attention that she had never noticed before. The listeners shifted in their seats, some leaning forward, others closing their eyes to absorb the music fully. She could sense the change in their expectations. What had begun as a light-hearted moment, a joke, had transformed into something more profound. The music carried sincerity and skill, a combination that demanded recognition. She felt a quiet thrill, knowing that her talent was making an impression far beyond what anyone had anticipated. She allowed the melody to evolve, introducing intricate passages that required full concentration and control. Her fingers danced across the keys, moving with a grace that only came from years of dedication. She was aware of the subtle gasps and exclamations from the audience, moments when a particularly challenging sequence hit with perfection. It was not arrogance that drove her playing, but the sheer joy of expression and the desire to share something beautiful. The room seemed to hold its breath. The usual hum of casual conversation had disappeared entirely, replaced by an attentive silence. Every note she played resonated with purpose, each one carrying a story she had never voiced. She felt the music taking over, guiding her hands, her mind, and even her heart. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a voice, a bridge between her inner world and those around her. She noticed the subtle reactions of the listeners. Some were visibly moved, their eyes softening, shoulders relaxing, as though the music had found a place in their hearts. Others watched in awe, admiration clear in their expressions. There were whispers, soft and reverent, praising her skill and the emotion she conveyed. She paid them little mind, focusing instead on the rhythm, the dynamics, the flow. She played for the music, but the effect on the audience was undeniable as the performance progressed. She introduced contrasts in the music, shifting from gentle passages to bold, dramatic chords. The room responded, the atmosphere changing with the sound. It was as if the piano itself had a personality, a presence that demanded respect. She felt connected not only to the instrument but also to the audience. A silent dialogue carried through melody. Every movement, every pause, every crescendo was part of a conversation that transcended words. Her confidence grew with each passing moment. The initial nerves that had accompanied her first steps to the piano were long gone, replaced by a sense of flow and certainty. She had become one with the music, allowing instinct and training to guide her. There was a freedom in this surrender, a liberation that made each note resonate with authenticity. She was no longer performing for approval. She was sharing herself in its purest form. The audience could no longer deny the depth of her talent. Even those who had once chuckled or doubted her ability were now captivated. Their expressions told the story. Surprise, admiration, and an almost tangible awe. She could feel the shift in perception, the breaking down of assumptions. The music was her voice, louder and clearer than any words could be, and it commanded respect. She pushed herself further, introducing a section that was technically demanding, a piece she had struggled with in the past but had mastered through persistence. Her hands flew across the keys with precision, executing complex passages flawlessly. The room seemed to vibrate with the intensity, each note striking a chord not only in her heart, but in the hearts of those who listened. Some leaned closer, holding their breath, caught in the spell of her performance. There were small murmurs of astonishment, a few whispered exclamations, but no interruptions. The listeners were enraptured, witnessing a skill that exceeded their expectations. She could sense their disbelief transforming into respect, their amusement replaced by genuine admiration. The music was bridging the gap between her hidden talent and their perception, creating a shared experience that lingered in the air. She allowed the music to breathe, inserting pauses and softer passages to create contrast and depth. It was not just the technical skill that impressed, but the emotion, the subtlety, the ability to make each note meaningful. She had learned that expression was as important as precision, and tonight she wielded both with mastery. Each phrase carried intention, each chord resonated with sincerity. As the piece reached its climax, she poured everything into the final section. Her fingers moved with speed and grace, hitting every note with clarity and strength. The room was alive with energy, the listeners leaning forward, captivated by the performance. She felt a thrill in the intensity, a joy in the full expression of her abilities. It was a moment where preparation, talent, and courage converged, creating something unforgettable. The final notes lingered, fading into a profound silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved, no one spoke. The room seemed suspended in the afterglow of the music, a collective pause to absorb the impact. Then, slowly, applause erupted, warm and genuine, echoing through the space. She looked up, surprised and pleased, seeing the faces of people who had once doubted her now beaming with admiration. She smiled softly, feeling a deep satisfaction. She had not only met expectations but had exceeded them, transforming a playful challenge into a moment of connection and recognition. The music had spoken for her, revealing a depth of skill and emotion that had been hidden for so long. She felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that her dedication and passion had created a memory for those who had listened. People approached her, shaking her hand, asking questions about the pieces she had played, complimenting her skill and expression. She responded with humility, grateful but not seeking attention. The experience had been transformative, showing her that talent, when shared, could touch lives and create bonds even in unexpected circumstances. It was a lesson she would carry with her forever. She left the piano that night with a sense of accomplishment and quiet pride. The room had witnessed her ability to turn a joke into something remarkable, to show that even the quietest person could command attention and admiration through talent and courage. She understood more deeply the power of music, the importance of taking chances, and the joy of sharing a gift that had been nurtured in private for so long. The memory of the performance would stay with her, a reminder of what could happen when she dared to step into the light. The room was quiet, the kind of silence that makes every sound sharper, every breath noticeable. She sat at the piano, feeling a mix of nerves and exhilaration. The applause from earlier still echoed faintly in her ears, but now she was alone with the instrument, and the remaining listeners were waiting, expectant, almost holding their breath. She knew this was the moment to push further, to show the depth of her ability, to transform curiosity into awe. She placed her hands on the keys, feeling the familiar coolness beneath her fingers. Her heart was steady, her focus intense. She began with soft, measured notes, deliberate and clear, setting the stage for what was to come. The music slowly gained momentum, weaving through gentle melodies before rising to more complex, intricate patterns. It was subtle at first, almost teasing the audience, allowing them to sense there was something extraordinary about to unfold. Her fingers moved with fluid precision, dancing across the keys with confidence and grace. Each note was intentional, each chord carefully shaped, conveying emotion as much as technical skill. She had practiced these pieces countless times, but tonight, the music seemed to take on a life of its own. The room, once casual and familiar, had transformed into a space of shared focus, as though the piano and the audience had entered a silent dialogue. The remaining listeners leaned in, captivated by the sound. Their previous amusement had completely vanished, replaced by attention and wonder. They watched as her fingers glided across the keys, effortlessly transitioning between rapid sequences and delicate harmonies. The complexity of the pieces she played was undeniable, yet she executed them with a natural fluidity that made the music seem effortless. It was clear that this was not a casual talent but a deeply honed skill. She let the music build, layer upon layer, combining technical mastery with emotional depth. She played with dynamics, varying the intensity and softness to draw the audience in, to create moments of tension and release. Every pause, every sustained note, was purposeful, giving the listeners time to absorb and reflect on the music. It was not only a performance but a story told through sound, a narrative that unfolded with each phrase. As the tempo increased, she introduced passages that were especially demanding, requiring precision, speed, and control. Her fingers moved almost independently, executing complex runs and intricate patterns with ease. She felt the power of the music coursing through her, driving her to play with even greater intensity. The audience could sense the effortlessness behind her mastery, the result of years of dedication and countless hours spent perfecting her craft. The room seemed to respond to the energy of her playing. Those who had been skeptical or teasing earlier now watched in stunned silence, unable to look away. Their expressions ranged from amazement to disbelief, a shared recognition of the talent they had underestimated. She could see the subtle widening of eyes, the leaning forward of bodies, the small intake of breath as they realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. She continued, pushing the music to its emotional and technical limits. The piece she played required complete focus, both mental and physical, and she embraced the challenge fully. Every note carried intention, Every chord resonated with power and clarity. It was a moment where skill met emotion, where the hours of practice transformed into something transcendent. The audience could feel it, a shared experience that was both intimate and expansive. Her confidence was unwavering, yet she remained attuned to the room, aware of the reactions her playing was eliciting. There was a quiet energy, a collective acknowledgement that something remarkable was happening. The initial joke that had prompted her to play now felt distant, irrelevant, replaced by genuine admiration. Her music had silenced doubt and disbelief, replacing it with respect and wonder. As she reached the climax of the piece, she poured every ounce of emotion and skill into the performance. Her hands moved with a speed and precision that was breathtaking, yet each note was clear and deliberate. The room seemed to hold its breath, the audience completely absorbed, caught in the spell of her music. There was an intensity in the performance, a force that drew everyone in and refused to let go. The final passage was powerful and expressive, a culmination of everything she had built throughout the evening. The notes rang out, filling the room with resonance and depth, each one leaving an impression on those who listened. She could feel the audience's astonishment, their collective realization that they were witnessing something far beyond ordinary talent. It was not just a performance. It was an unveiling of her years of dedication, a revelation of her inner world expressed through music. When the last note faded, there was a moment of absolute stillness. No one moved, no one spoke. The silence was heavy, filled with awe and admiration, as though the audience was trying to process what they had just heard. Then, slowly, applause began, soft at first, then growing louder and more enthusiastic. It was genuine and heartfelt, a tribute to the skill, passion, and courage she had displayed. She looked up, a mix of surprise and quiet pride washing over her. People approached her, some with wide smiles, others with eyes shining with respect. They complimented her talent, asked questions about the pieces she had played, and expressed their amazement. She answered with humility, grateful for the acknowledgement but focused on the music itself rather than the praise. The moment had been transformative, both for her and for those who had witnessed it. It was a reminder of the power of dedication and the unexpected ways in which hidden talent could emerge. The colleague who had teased her earlier stood a little apart, shaking their head in astonishment. "I had no idea," they said quietly, almost to themselves. It was a simple statement, but it carried weight, a recognition of the depth of her skill and the surprise of seeing it revealed. She offered a polite smile, understanding that this moment had shifted perceptions in ways words could not fully capture. She remained at the piano for a few more minutes, playing softly, letting the music linger in the room. It was a personal moment, a quiet reflection on what had just occurred. She felt a mixture of exhilaration and calm, a sense of accomplishment that went beyond recognition or applause. The performance had been more than a display of talent. It had been a statement, a revelation of her dedication, skill, and passion. The audience began to disperse gradually, but the energy of the performance stayed with them. Conversations resumed, but there was a difference now, a subtle acknowledgement of what had been witnessed. They had seen her at her best, transforming a playful challenge into a powerful experience. It was a moment that would linger in memory, a reminder that talent could surprise, inspire, and leave a lasting impression. She finally stood, feeling the weight of the evening and the exhilaration of what had just unfolded. The piano had been her medium, her voice, and she had used it to communicate in ways words never could. She walked away with a quiet sense of pride and fulfillment, aware that this experience had changed both her and the audience. The memory of their astonishment, the shift from doubt to admiration, would remain with her, a testament to the power of hidden talent revealed in unexpected moments. That night, she understood something important, that stepping forward, even when unsure or teased, could lead to moments of transformation. The music had spoken for her, revealing not only her ability but also her courage and commitment. It was a lesson she would carry forever, a reminder that talent, when shared, could create connections, evoke emotions, and inspire those who witnessed it. The piano, once her private refuge, had become a bridge to the world, and she knew she would never forget the impact of this performance. The night had grown quieter, and the gathering was winding down, but she still felt a lingering energy in the room. Her fingers tingled from the performance, and her heart was still beating with the excitement of what had just happened. She walked slowly through the space, observing the small groups of people who had stayed behind, talking quietly, still processing the extraordinary display they had witnessed. She felt a subtle shift in how they looked at her, a recognition that had not been there before. As she gathered her things, several people approached her with curiosity and admiration. They asked questions about her background, where she had learned to play, and which pieces had been her favorites. She answered with gentle smiles and quiet humility, happy to share just a little without feeling like she had to explain everything. Each interaction reinforced a new sense of confidence, a realization that her talent had created connections she had never imagined. Even those who had initially teased her were now respectful, acknowledging her skill with genuine warmth. A few colleagues invited her to perform at future events, suggesting that her talent deserved a wider audience. She was surprised but pleased, recognizing the opportunity to share her music beyond the small circle that had seen her tonight. She considered it carefully, feeling both excitement and a quiet nervousness. Performing publicly had always been a distant thought, something she had only imagined in private. Now it was no longer a dream but a real possibility. As the crowd began to thin further, she returned to the piano one last time. The room was nearly empty, and the soft light created a peaceful atmosphere. She sat and allowed her fingers to move over the keys, playing softly, almost as a reflection of the evening. The notes carried a sense of closure, a gentle farewell to the space, and to the people who had witnessed her reveal her hidden talent. It was personal and calming, a private moment amid the lingering excitement. She noticed that even the remaining few were watching quietly, drawn by the music. They did not speak or move, simply absorbing the beauty of the melodies. It was a reminder to her that music could communicate deeply without words, that it could leave impressions that would last longer than any conversation. She felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of satisfaction that went beyond applause or recognition. The music had fulfilled her in a way that nothing else could. After finishing the last piece, she stood and took a deep breath, feeling a sense of completion. The evening had transformed from a simple gathering into an unforgettable experience, one that had changed how she saw herself and how others saw her. She understood that her talent, once private and hidden, could inspire and connect people in profound ways. It was a revelation that left her feeling both humbled and empowered. As she walked toward the door, several guests approached her to express their appreciation once more. Their words were simple but heartfelt, acknowledging not just her skill, but the emotion and dedication she had poured into her performance. She thanked them quietly, smiling softly, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. These interactions left her with a lingering warmth, a confirmation that sharing her gift could touch others in meaningful ways. Outside, the night air was cool and calm, and she paused for a moment to reflect on everything that had happened. The events of the evening played through her mind, from the initial teasing to the full realization of her ability to surprise and captivate. She recognized that this experience was more than just a performance. It was a turning point, a moment that reshaped her confidence and perspective. She had stepped into the light when she had once stayed in the shadows, and it had made all the difference. She thought about the lessons she had learned. She realized that talent and dedication were powerful, but courage was equally important. It was not enough to have skill. One had to be willing to share it, even in moments of uncertainty or doubt. The applause and admiration were rewarding, but the true impact was in the connections she had made and the respect she had earned. It was a reminder that even a single decision to play, to step forward, could have far-reaching effects. Over the following days, the experience continued to resonate. People who had attended the gathering spoke about it, sharing stories of her performance and the way it had captivated them. She received messages of encouragement and interest, invitations to play at other events, and expressions of admiration from those who had once underestimated her. Each message reinforced the idea that her music could reach beyond her immediate circle, touching lives in ways she had never imagined. she also noticed a change within herself. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, a sense that she could face challenges and step into new opportunities. The evening had shown her that her abilities were not just for private enjoyment, but could be shared to inspire, impress, and connect with others. She felt a deeper appreciation for the discipline and dedication that had brought her to this point, and a renewed motivation to continue refining her skills. As time passed, she began accepting invitations to perform in small gatherings, community events, and even informal recitals. Each performance was a chance to connect with people through music, to communicate emotions and stories that words alone could not express. She found joy in seeing the reactions of listeners, in the way music could bridge gaps, evoke emotions, and create lasting impressions. Her talent had become a way to engage with the world in a meaningful and fulfilling way. Through it all, she remained humble and focused on the music itself. Recognition and praise were gratifying, but her true motivation came from the act of playing, from the connection she felt to the instrument and to the emotions she could convey. She continued to practice diligently, exploring new pieces and refining her technique, always striving to express herself more fully through sound. Her love for music remained at the center of everything she did. Looking back, she understood that the evening when she had been told to play as a joke was a turning point. What had started as a playful challenge had become a defining moment, one that revealed not just her talent, but her courage and resilience. She had shown that even in unexpected circumstances, it was possible to transform doubt into admiration, laughter into respect, and a simple opportunity into something extraordinary. The experience also taught her about the perceptions of others. She realized how easily people could underestimate someone based on outward appearances or initial impressions. Her quiet demeanor had masked her abilities, but when given the chance, her music spoke volumes. It was a reminder that everyone carries hidden strengths, and that giving oneself the courage to share them could lead to surprising and rewarding outcomes. In the months that followed, she continued to play and share her talent, each performance reinforcing the lessons of that pivotal night. She understood that recognition and praise were fleeting, but the impact of connecting through music was enduring. She found fulfillment in knowing that her talent could inspire others, create joy, and leave a lasting impression on those who experienced it. She also became more aware of her own growth. The confidence she gained from stepping forward had ripple effects in other areas of her life. She approached new challenges with a sense of assurance, trusting in her abilities and her capacity to rise to unexpected opportunities. The evening at the piano had been more than a performance. It had been a lesson in courage, self-expression, and the transformative power of sharing one's gifts. The memory of that night remained vivid, a touchstone she could return to whenever doubt crept in. She remembered the initial teasing, the surprise on faces, the captivated silence, and the eventual admiration. Each moment reinforced the value of perseverance, practice, and the willingness to step forward even when the outcome was uncertain. It was a story she would carry with her forever, a reminder of the unexpected ways talent and courage could intersect to create moments of beauty and connection. She understood, more deeply than ever, that music was not just a personal passion, but a bridge to the world. It had the power to move, to inspire, and to reveal aspects of herself that might otherwise remain hidden. She embraced the responsibility and privilege of sharing that gift, knowing that each performance was an opportunity to touch lives and leave a lasting impression. The evening when she had been asked to play as a joke had shown her that sometimes the smallest moments could lead to the most profound transformations. In the end, she carried a quiet joy and a sense of purpose. The piano, once a private refuge, had become a source of connection and expression, a tool through which she could communicate and inspire. She had learned that courage, talent, and dedication could combine to create unforgettable experiences, and that sharing one's abilities, even when unexpected, could lead to recognition, respect, and lasting fulfillment. She stepped forward with confidence, knowing that her music would continue to shape her life and touch the lives of others in ways she could never fully predict.